Just how much of a cause for optimism is this, and what does it tell us then about the near future? Well, let's try and answer those questions with Dr. Duncan Robertson. Duncan is a policy and strategy analytics academic at Loughborough University. Duncan, good morning.
Morning, Richard. Hi.
How carefully do we need to treat this news?
Well, I think, as you said, it's a reason for optimism, and I think, goodness knows we need that at the moment. So, on the face of it, it's very good news. But I think, some of those sort of caveats that you mentioned are there in terms of it's not really going to solve this kind of second wave, and, we still need to be carrying on the way we are until this vaccine is deployed widely.
What did you really notice about what the Prime Minister, Jonathan Van Tam, and also the companies have been saying about this vaccine? Was there anything that stood out to you particularly?
Well, I think there were a couple of things. I mean, if you looked at the press conference, there was the vaccine itself, and there are a few things which make it a little bit challenging. So, in order to transport it, it has to be at minus 80 degrees centigrade, which, is colder than most of our freezers. So there's a certain challenge about the sort of logistics of getting it round to the people that need it. And I think the other thing is that, it is one of a few vaccines that are coming, down the pipeline. So it's not as though this is our only hope. There are a few that hopefully will be, being announced in the next few months. And I think the other thing is it's we're not pinning all of our kind of strategy on this one vaccine. I think it'll be a sort of portfolio, hopefully, of vaccines that will be, analysed rigorously. And as you say, they're sort of going through these regulatory hurdles, and then we can sort of plan who gets them in what order.
And that's going to be key, isn't it? The kind of thing you finished with there is going to be one of the most debated topics. There's 20 million, the number seemed to be. To be immunised, you need 2. It's going to be who gets them and who gets them first as a decent-sized talking point.
Well, exactly. And I think, there's been a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes by the JCVI, the Joint Committee of Vaccine and Immunisation. And they've set out kind of generic advice to the government. And this is, number one, adults in care homes and care home workers, then health and social care workers, people working in the NHS, and then you sort of go down the sort of age brackets, over 80s, over 75s, over 70s, over 65s, and then you get the sort of high-risk individuals. So these may be the people who have been shielding, and then down to over 60s, over 55s, and over 50s, and by the time you get down there, that's probably about half the population. So, but that's, as I say, this sort of generic advice, and it's not specific to the particular Pfizer vaccine. So what we don't know about the Pfizer vaccine is who was vaccinated and, what effects they had. So it may be there's a certain amount of shuffling that goes on in that priority when we know the efficacy of individual vaccines.
They're a reasonable company. They're quite a well-renowned company. I mean, we're saying the name like everybody should know who they are, but they are pretty well regarded in the field, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And these pharmaceutical companies have R&D budgets of millions and billions of pounds, and they've been putting a lot of work. Science generally has been putting a lot of work into fighting the vaccine. Fighting the virus in terms of vaccines, but also, the sort of modelling that goes on behind it as well. So, it's basically all hands to the pump, within individual companies, but generally the sort of science community is coming together to fight this.
Interesting that the message about the short-term measures was being rammed home still almost as much as the potential good news about the vaccine.
Well, I think that's critical because, what we don't want to happen is for people to see this, vaccine on the horizon and think, well, that's it, sort of game over, let's, go and start hugging each other again, which we'd all like to do. But in actual fact, it's not going to make much difference to this second wave. So really, we've got to see this second wave out before we then start thinking about vaccination in the wider population. So, keep going with what we're doing, trying to suppress the virus and trying to prevent it, getting any worse. And hopefully, around Christmas, it will start to be coming down again. But this vaccine isn't going to solve the immediate problem this year. And so that's, I think, why we're looking at 2021, kind of spring, summer, until, it solves or is starting to solve the problem.
Dr. Robertson, thank you very much indeed. That's Duncan Robertson, Policy and Strategy Analytics Academic at Loughborough University.